figured it might be easier to try to answer these questions on video. So I'll take a few minutes to do that. The first one was four steps of the entrepreneurship cycle. How did I recognize, or how do you recognize an opportunity? In the case of game time giving, experience is important. And so your experiences help you to see things that other people don't see. So because you came from a different background or were raised in a different country, or your parents had this knowledge or that knowledge, that makes you uniquely qualified to look at certain problems a different way than anyone else that had that exact same experience. So we all every day are seeing opportunities. It's just an opportunity is a unique way of looking at solving a problem. In the case of game time giving, I just so happened to have served on several nonprofit boards. It just so happened that I had a certification in gamification. It just so happened that I was into sports. So there were a lot of things that had to line up that made looking at giving to charity, which I did with my nonprofits, and gamifying that process, which I learned about with my gamification design certification, and being a sports person, I was uniquely qualified to see that opportunity. So I recognized the opportunity because I had experiences that made that opportunity unique for me. And I think that works for anybody else. That's why two people can look at the same problem on the same issue, and some of them will see the opportunity, and one person may see the opportunity, and then the other person won't. Next question was how did I exploit it, and what did I use to exploit it? Well, go back to my prior answer. Once there's an opportunity, you have to use your skill set, number one, your talent, number two, and your unique perspective on that problem, because that's what you're ultimately bringing. Because that's the thing that you have that as an entrepreneur that nobody else can bring. It's your unique perspective. So I was able to exploit it because I had a skill in gamification design. I had a talent around software development so I could build it, and I had experience around the market. So it's just taking the things that you have, your unique gifts basically, and applying them to the opportunity. That's how you exploit it. I said, how did I get started? That's interesting. Probably my first business was a little online bookstore that I called Culture Corner. Actually, this was before online. It was a catalog, as a matter of fact. And I got started simply by talking to people who I thought had the problem. That's where I started. So I went to nonprofit organizations and said, "You think this would be an interesting way to raise money?" I would talk to athletic directors of development and say, "Is this something that might could fit alongside your current development efforts?" And so the best place to start with any business is to start by talking to the customers or potential customers, and they will teach you everything else you need to know. And then what's enabling us to exist? At the end of the day, the only thing, two things that keep a business alive: there's energy and cash, and you need to have both, energy and money. They say that most businesses fail in the first 3 or 4 years. The business didn't fail; it ran out of those one of those two things. Either the founders ran out of energy, they got tired, and that's very possible, or they ran out of money, and that's very possible. So if you can keep a steady stream of cash coming into the business by whatever means that is, and you can keep the energy around the idea going, then that business will last forever. So cash and money is how you keep it existing. The energy part comes from the founders and the founding team, and the money part comes from pretty much the market, whether it be customers or investors or what have you. Major challenges and responses, those dealt with in the past, currently faced in the present, and those anticipated in the future. Believe it or not, probably the biggest challenge that I have seen over and over and over again is keeping the team together. The people issues. People will bring their own agendas to the business, which they should, but as long and that works. until those agendas conflict. So managing people's agendas has been the biggest challenge. What I mean by that is creating an opportunity and a business where everyone can come to the table and get more than a paycheck from it, where they can realize what they're trying to do, realize their dreams, goals, and aspirations inside of what you're trying to build. And that's very, very tough to create. And then manage that because the many of these agendas are conflicting. And so that'd probably be the biggest challenge. And how do you deal with that? You deal with that by having what I call crucial conversations. Basically, crucial conversations are those tough conversations that you have before they before the tough point hits. It's the tough conversation that you have with the co-founder that isn't pulling their weight, but you have the conversation before you're fed up. Or it's the tough conversation that you have with an investor after you spend up all their money and don't know how you're going to get it back to them. Well, you need to be having that conversation on a monthly basis, saying things aren't looking well, things aren't looking right. And so I dealt with them simply by telling the truth. I mean, I know that sounds simple, but yeah, simply by telling the truth. And just if you made a mistake, you made a mistake, that's perfectly fine. Um, Current problems faced probably is keeping the cash thing, and then personally my energy is good, but the current facing problem is keeping the cash up to a point where I'd like it to be. And as far as anticipating things in the future, um, the business that we're in and what we're doing is going to get complicated as sports betting gets complicated or takes hold. So as the laws change, which for example was a big issue back in 2015, when the laws changed, that affected us. So there are legal changes that are happening around sports. There are legal issues that are happening around sports betting, and that's going to bring big players into sports betting and hence game time giving, which is charity, but it's seen a lot of times as like betting. Then that's going to be a challenge. So we just need to address that, but we are aware of it. So let's see reflections. One thing you would have done differently. Wow. Let's see. One thing I would have done differently. I think I pulled up too soon sometimes. Um, I would have went a little bit harder. I also believe I probably would have hurt some people in the process. But I'm looking back on it, and I think we all would have been happier if I would have just stayed the course. So my reflections, what would I have done differently? I would have focused considerably more on putting together a solid team, and I would have focused considerably more on talking to customers. But more importantly, I would have focused more on just grinding and staying to the grind. And when I had doubts about what I was doing or what we were doing, I would have kept going despite the doubts. Um, and one thing I'm most proud of with Game Time Giving, probably the thing I'm most proud of with Game Time Giving is what we're trying to do. What we're doing is we're making a dollar, which you have to do in a business, but we're also making a difference. So we're helping nonprofit organizations raise money. For me, that's huge. Most businesses that I see have to choose between either making money and then maximizing the amount of money that they make for their stakeholders, or they focus completely on their social impact. Hence, they may not be as profitable as they could be. And so that balancing act is huge. MBA school, business school teaches us all about the financial side of things. And at the end of the day, the way we measure the business is this financial bottom line, with the balance sheet, with the income statements, and with the cash flow statement, stuff like that. But if you can balance that with what I'll call a double bottom line, that means that yes, we're making money, but we're also making a difference. That is huge. That's also difficult to do. It's counterproductive in many ways to what people normally think about business. But for me, that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of because even when we haven't made lot of money, or even when we haven't made a big difference, we've been able to keep that level and steady. Let's see. And I think that's all of the questions. Anyway, that was about 10 minutes. Hopefully, it answered your questions. Feel free to reach back out, and I'll do my best to fill in any of the gaps.